Night shifters, ever witnessed a paranormal activity? If so, what was it? I have two stories. My first overnight job was as a train dispatcher in VT. The center was in a train station that was about 100 years old. Now maybe being on day 6 on the extra board made me quite, but I saw a person standing in front of the restrooms at like 4 a.m. White guy in his 40s dressed semi-formal. Many co-workers would find items like that. Second instance was when I worked overnights at a mental health crisis house. It's a home-like setting that a step below inpatient for mental health issues. It also provided a place for people at risk of relapsing to stay to have support. Anyway, there was one room in the place people would get weird vibes about. I would do a room check and get the feeling I was being watched each time. Other night staff reported stomping upstairs, hearing voices, and sudden temperature changes in the main room. This room also had the highest rates of self-harm and bump-ups, sending clients to inpatient or calling police if violent. I tried to sage and salt the room at one time, even did the bang on pots asking it to leave. It started to do more stomping when I was there. There were times there would be no clients in the house, so I could sleep on the couch in between calls. I started to have a lot more lucid dreams and sleep paralysis after trying to get rid of it. What I found interesting is how many different cultures would come in and out of the house, and if someone was spiritually connected they would pick up on the vibe something is up with the room. We had Kabbalah, Santeria, New Age, Catholic, you name it. They all picked up that something was weird about the place. So second-hand story, and just to be clear, I don't believe in paranormal activity, as personally I have never witnessed anything I can't explain through other more likely events. In any case, in the house I grew up in, my sister always said there was a ghost, usually being described as an elderly old man in a flap cap who was never frightening or aggressive. He was apparently just as friendly old man. When we moved out, the person who we sold it to was a personal friend of my mother who planned to renovate the house to sell on. We found out that one of the younger apprentices who was working on the house a couple of times passed an elderly old man on the stairs, etc. One time he did this, then turned to ask who he was, as he realized he'd never spoken to the fellow, assuming he was part of the team who was also working on the renovation. When he turned after passing him on the stairs one time, he had just vanished. When he asked one of the senior workmen, he was told there is no one in the team with that description. The next time he saw him again, he did the same thing, passed him while walking through the house, and he turned to ask who he was, and he'd again just disappeared. The apprentice ran from the house and refused to enter it again. We found out when he gave a proper description of the man, he was exactly the same as my sister used to describe. Very strange indeed, and not something I can easily explain away, but then again I never personally saw him or experienced, so take it as you will. I used to intern in a recording studio in NYC years ago, where it was technically open 24/7, meaning there was always someone there whether clients were in or not. Anyway, it was on an upper floor of a building, and due to the amount of expensive equipment inside, you could not access that floor by elevator without someone letting you up. The button for that floor was locked out, so you couldn't press it from inside the elevator. There was a camera at the front entrance downstairs, another at the elevator entrance, and one inside the elevator, all of which could be viewed from the front desk of the studio, so when people arrived you would buzz them in, wait until you saw them enter the elevator, and then you would have to push the button for the studio floor to bring the elevator up. Well, anyway, one of the nights I was working the overnight shift, and it was just me and another dude, doing cleaning, maintenance, etc., when we hear the elevator start running at probably like 3:30 in the morning. The whole building is all offices, so really there is nobody in the building past 5 to 6 p.m. besides us, so we thought it was a bit strange. The other guy looks at the cameras and there's nothing at all, no one in the elevator either. So although it's weird, we just figure someone must still be in the building and called it from a different floor. It made sense until all of a sudden we see it stop at our floor and we hear the door ding. We're both in the lobby about 15 feet away from the elevator, and we give each other the hardest WTF stare ever. I can't explain how much I didn't want those doors to open. We stare like a deer in headlights, completely motionless at the doors as they open. Nobody is there, no one pushed the button, nothing. We both keep staring completely still and silent, and it becomes really fucking creepy as time goes on and the doors don't shut, as if something is standing in doorway blocking the sensor. The doors usually close after 5 seconds or so, but we stared at it for a good 20 to 30 seconds or so before they closed and the elevator returned back to the lobby. We stared for a bit longer before simultaneously looking at each other and saying, "What the fuck, dude?" The next day we asked a couple of the other guys about it, and one of the guys said the same thing happened to him in the middle of the night when he was by himself. He said he almost shit himself. Maybe there's a logical explanation for it, elevator malfunction, etc., but it was really damn freaky since the place was generally kinda creepy and night and there had been some other weird things. I used to work the early shift making bagels, 3 a.m., and would sometimes see things in the reflection of my oven that were running around behind me. They looked like chickens. I told a co-worker about it and he took me in the back where we stored the flour and pointed at the ceiling. It was completely crusted with some dark brown fuzzy looking substance. He told me the building we were in was once a chicken processing plant. Thousands of chickens had died right there. The stuff on the ceiling was blood and feathers. Not during a night shift, but on a bleak, stormy day with just as much spooky potential as one. I was alone in the kitchen, sandwich shop, when I spotted a customer in the lobby. Never heard him come in, door is pretty squeaky and closes hard, so it's difficult to miss someone walking in even without a bell like most businesses have. His back was to me, facing the opposite wall, standing in the middle of the room. I never saw his face, but he seemed to be an older man, 70s. I greeted him with a hello, but he didn't reply. The stillness in the way he stood there, coupled with how he was facing away from me and dim lighting, it had been hot and humid out before the storm, so we had minimal lighting on to try and keep cool, gave me kind of a Blair Witch vibe in retrospect, but at the time I waved it off as him looking out the window or something while he decided what he wanted. Plus I'm used to rude customers, so I wasn't surprised by him ignoring me. I turned away to wash my hands so I'd be ready to throw together his sandwich once he was ready to order. I'd had my back turned 20 seconds, yes, this was during COVID, so I was counting, and when I turned back around he was gone. Again, I never heard the heavy door open or close, and the only other door he could have left through was close enough to me that I would have absolutely noticed. He never came back, and I don't see why anyone would come into a sandwich shop for 30 seconds just to stare at the wall opposite the front counter and then leave without a word. Also, now that I think about it, he didn't even look wet, and it was pouring outside. So, I'm not really one to believe in ghosts, but silent old man with Blair Witch vibes plus dark and stormy day plus appearing/disappearing without a sound equals I definitely saw a ghost that day. Not necessarily night shift, but I used to work in a bar that was next door to a funeral director's. Not only was it next door, it had actually previously been part of the funeral directors, and the welcome slab outside had the director's name and year carved in it, like Ferguson's 1891. In Scotland, so we were only open until 1 a.m. at the latest. There were a few different events, nothing uber scary, but the whole vibe of the place when you were on your own was so unsettling. Nighttime routine would mean one staff member would be downstairs counting tills and the other would be in the venue cleaning everything. I remember one night I was polishing the bar taps and I saw someone standing behind me in the reflection. I spun around so quickly to no one being there and messaged my co-worker to come upstairs. She called out for me from the bottom of the stairs before she'd even got my message, and when we reunited she said she'd heard me coming up and down the stairs multiple times. The weirdest part is she was counting cash 2 levels down from me, and I hadn't been down one set of stairs at all, never mind 2. This place also had 2 sets of stairs that lead nowhere, and in our wine cellar we had a massive old iron door that had a wheel to open it. I'm not sure what it was for, but the wine racks were over it anyway, preventing you from trying to open it. In the girls' toilets there was a bit that looks like it'd be a window, but was boarded up and below street level. It was just a board over a sharp 13 feet drop in some weird underground alleyway thing. One night after locking up we stayed behind for a couple drinks and one of my co-workers was dared to jump down. She did, was fine and we were all laughing. She went so quiet all of a sudden and started freaking out, asking us to help get her out. When we did she was just quiet and went home, and a few days later eventually said she felt someone touching her arm. Not a gentle brush but like someone had put their palm on her forearm and wrapped their hand round it. While working at a psych ward, every morning at about 2 a.m. there would be the sound of someone running down the main service hallway, followed by the same door at the end slamming. One time I kept a close eye on the area but when I was distracted for a few seconds the footsteps began but when I got to the area there was nothing. According to one of the managers that had happened for several years, always at the same time every morning, and most believed it was a ghost of one of the deceased clients. Another time, all the battery-powered wall clocks in the unit spun around a few times simultaneously. That was freaky and everyone in the area screamed. Oh yeah. I used to work in a grocery store from 2015 to 2017. I posted a while ago, but fuck it, I'll post again. Well, not so much as scary but really unsettling, and this was at an old grocery store I used to work at. There would be several nights where I would see shadows or apparitions out of the corner of my eye whether I was sweeping the aisle floors or cleaning the store's meat department. Would even see silhouettes of really strange shit in the meat department. Stuff would get knocked off shelves despite not being capable of it, like a box of rice that is pushed back to where even if it did fall over it would still have plenty of shelf space to catch it. Constant feeling of being watched or hearing voices when there was no one there. Especially if I worked a solo night and former co-workers who also worked alone heard the same things, would even swear they would hear us despite not being there. Footsteps being heard coming up the stairs coming up to the employee break room even if all of us were there or if it was a solo night for any of us. Equipment would be moved or shifted around slightly. Once witnessed a mop handle stand up on its own for 3 seconds and then readjust itself despite no real force capable of doing it. Would often see people inside windows looking at us and there is no one out at that time of night. Guy I used to work with asked me if I was playing a joke on him when I was cleaning off the bandsaw in the meat department, told him no, I was cleaning the machine while I had my headphones in listening to BBC on NPR, and he told me he heard footprints walking behind him on the floor while he was mopping near the cash registers and he felt like someone was watching him. And the next night was rife with activity and we even found a footprint that didn't match our shoes at all and no evidence of someone else breaking in or being locked in with us. It was in a part where there was mop water from cleaning a caked-in spill because we were constantly being left with any cleaning. Creepy one here. When I was working a solo night and was cleaning the meat department. During the middle of the cleaning while hosing off the meat cut preparation table, saw the plastic door entries all over move on their own. And if one of these is open the whole air of the room feels it and all these other plastic ones move on their own. Can especially use this to tell if coworker was about to sneak up on me and try to jump scare me, especially if it was a night we were all on edge afterwards, and there was no one there. I looked all around and it was pretty much empty anywhere and I swear when I left briefly to gather my bearings I saw someone out of the corner of my eye walking around in there, and later on when I finished cleaning it and turned off the lights, saw the deli slicer moving around on its own as if someone were trying to mess with it. Former night shift supervisors' experiences. Well, here is a couple that I remember. Right before you guys came in one night, remember I was making sure till amounts were correct for the turned-in tills at the main safe, and as I did that I heard footsteps behind me and I looked around twice, saw no one there and everyone had gone home. So I brushed it off, albeit a little freaked out, but I carried on trying to push it out of my mind, and not even 2 minutes after that I heard a loud menacing male voice shout, "You fucking bitch," in my ear, and I quickly looked around and saw no one around. I just left it alone until you got there because I was too scared to continue. Another one I remember is Trip, note was just his nickname, had already showed and was upstairs talking to his girlfriend on the phone, and I was facing something, I can't remember what it was, but it was in the cereal aisle, and as I was doing so, I remember clear as day I saw a box of Frosted Flakes that was in the way back just launch itself right off the shelf and hit the floor without bouncing or anything, it just hit the ground flat. Which freaked me out. And then 20 minutes later I saw Trip run into the meat room and yell at whoever was in there to get the fuck out of there. Store is closed because he saw the plastic doors move on their own, and we both obviously know when someone goes in there through those doors it makes them all sway and weave. I asked Trip what that was about afterwards, and he said he saw someone go in the meat room and thought it was a customer who was well known for being a jackass going in there to try to get a rack of rotisserie ribs or a chicken, and there was nobody there. More of my own experiences. When me and Trip worked together, we would often see shadow figures dart across the aisles in a split second, especially if we were looking directly down the aisle and it wasn't just bad lighting, lights had actually been changed out a week prior. A jug of Tide was knocked off a second shelf and it was tucked in the back, and both me and Trip stumbled upon it and neither of us saw it or heard it fall, nothing was broken either. Sometimes the music that was kept on all the time and playing through the intercom system would cut out briefly as if someone was about to call or make an announcement, but all we would hear is the little ping it made, and only once did we heard something of what sounded like a woman make what sounded like a quick and it quickly faded out. We rushed up to the front of the store and saw nothing. We looked all around and checked each phone, even the one by the offices and service center, and nothing was out of place. This one happened with anyone who was working in the meat room or outside the meat room, would see shadow figures in it whether the lights were off or on, would also see carts used for moving tubs that had slabs of meat to be prepared and packaged get moved from their original spot from after we cleaned them, would hear equipment shuffling. We would also see faces looking at us out of the corner of our eyes through the windows. I'm in law enforcement. Me and my partner get sent to a call for an alarm activation. No big deal, but this is not one of our usual alarms. It's a new one we've never been to before. Takes us longer than normal to find the house because it's way back off the road and no lights are on. We finally find the place, and it's super creepy. Spiders and webs everywhere, nothing outside the house like a trash can or knickknacks. We split up, per the usual, to check the outside for open doors/windows. I go one way, he goes the other. The house is 2 stories. I get this sort of garage/carport looking thing, along with a locked shop of some sort on the first floor, nothing weird seen or heard. Partner is still making his way around to me from where we started. I find the stairs to the second floor and head up. I wind up on a giant covered porch attached to the house. And it's huge. Literally the size of the carport below, with about 4 sets of wicker outdoor furniture. I'm looking around, don't see anything super weird. Partner finally gets to me upstairs, and we talk about the weird layout for a minute. During this time, I feel slightly unsettled but am unsure why. I start looking a little closer through the sliding glass doors at the front of the house. Partner tells me everything is locked up from his side, and there's even vines growing over some windows and doors. I start noticing little things in the living room. The carpet looks like it's from 1962, no TV, no electronics in general, very 60s layout. I thought all of that was weird, but I've seen weirder on this job. I then ask dispatch what the alarm activation was. I get told attic exit. Super weird and very specific, but okay. So we start looking around best we can in the living room. No attic. Then it occurs to me. What if it's outside in this giant covered porch? I look up, sure enough, directly above me is an attic. I can even see the alarm sensor boxes on it. I look at my partner and tell him I'm not going up. He suggests we rock, paper, scissors for it. I'm an idiot and agree. I lose. So I'm going up in the attic. At this point, we've made jokes about how weird all of this is. I'm slightly unsettled but haven't said anything, and I've literally never seen an attic outside that has alarms. Also, who leaves their house looks like the 60s. I reluctantly pull my gun out and start climbing the ladder. I should mention I'm chubby. Attics and ladders aren't my friends. Stick my head up just far enough to see there are no people and not a lot of stuff up there. And it smells really weird. It smells like old people have been living up there for 20 years. Like dead old people. Not actual dead body, thankfully, but like the smell of old people has died up there. I quickly come back down with nothing but the weird smell to report. I shrug it off as we go to leave. Partner pulls up next to me, jokingly saying, "We're looking at this all the wrong way. We weren't looking for someone getting into the attic. We should have been looking for something getting out." We both laugh it off as weird call/weird job and drive off. As we drive back to our hiding spot a mile or so away, me in front of him in separate cars, I see what looks like a person standing in the roadway out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a black female wearing dark clothing holding a light-colored bag, though I only saw the person for a split second. I'm not 100% sure of what I saw, so I wait and see if partner says anything about it. A few seconds after I pass whatever I saw, partner calls out over the radio that he and I are getting out with a person in the roadway at given intersection. I turn around with him. This all happens within probably 20 seconds. We turn around, and can't find the person. Person vanished completely. We described the person to each other and both definitely saw it and saw the same thing. No idea where person/thing went. It was less than half mile from creepy house. So we're pretty sure that we're both haunted now, thanks to work. We've had one more instance of weird, unexplained happenings at work. We attribute it to our ghost. So that's the story of how I became haunted and ran into a ghost that I accidentally released. Not night shift, just a regular dude. And I don't really believe in the paranormal. But I had this one thing happen that I have zero explanation for. I've also told this story on Reddit before. I was a teenager studying for major secondary school exams. So one weekend, my parents, brother and grandparents went to a function and I was home alone. For reference, because of the country I live in, our house has steel grills in front of every door and window, like a prison. My room is at the front of the house. It's something like 9:30 or 10 p.m. I head to the kitchen, which is at the opposite end of the house. It also houses the stairs to the second floor, which is where my parents' and brother's rooms are. As I'm getting something from the fridge, I hear my mom yell my name, so I say coming and start up the steps. 2 steps up, I remember that makes no fucking sense because I'm home alone. I call out to whatever, and I hear my name again. Fuck, that's so hard. I don't generally run, but I sprinted back to my room, and locked the door. After a couple minutes, when I think I've lost my mind and was hearing things, I decided to head back to the kitchen. As I get to my door and unlock it, as if on cue, I hear footsteps in the passageway. Again, fuck that. Relock the door, grab something of my desk to defend myself and hide under my bed. Footsteps stop at my door. Waited for damn near half an hour under the bed until my parents called to say they were almost home. Went to open up the place so they could get in and nothing was unlocked or broken, so it sure as hell wasn't a person. It's roughly 12 or so years later and I still have no clue what went on that night. I work at a Walmart. When I started working apparel on the night shift, the others in that department started trying to spook me with tales about it being haunted and yada yada yada. I didn't really care. I grew up in a haunted house, so ghost stories didn't bother me. And then we actually experienced something. I was like, huh, neat. But one of the ones who had been trying to spook me freaked right the fuck out. It was hilarious. She and I had been standing about 5 or 6 feet apart, talking to each other. The store had closed at midnight and we were the only ones in apparel. Right between us, both of us heard a female voice as clear as day. I only heard the voice, but no words. My co-worker said she heard words, but she was so freaked out she never told me what she heard exactly. I work the night shift in a hotel. It's a pretty old building, so lots of weird stuff happening. What stands out in particular is that there is a very creepy statue, which one night was gone. I asked the morning receptionist why they had removed it. She seemed confused. We checked and it was there again. I swear it was gone during the night. Next shift I could make a picture of the statue if anyone is interested. It's a very creepy statue. I was working at an assisted living facility on the dementia unit. The place was originally a mansion that had burnt down. When it burnt down, 2 children and their mother had perished. Now back to when I was working there, when the elderly were towards the end. The veil between our world and the spirit world is thinned. My one resident came out of her room hysterical. She said there were 2 young children that were looking for their mother. Me fully believed her and told her I would try to help them, to try and console her. I got her tucked in and calmed and trying to hide my uneasiness. I go sit in the office and then another resident says this lady keeps calling for her children, and Dick was annoyed. So me, extremely creeped, goes to the office and calls my coworker and her, and I spent the rest of the night with her. I used to be a manager at a local movie theater and we had some spookery afoot. The theater was relatively new, as was the road it was on. The area was developed in the late 90s, but, before the area was developed, it had been farmland. The street that the theater, as well as a bunch of shopping centers and a Walmart, was where an old farmhouse was, and, sadly and very much like a horror movie, the farm had been home to a very brutal family murder. The father killed the whole family and then himself. So I worked at the theater in 2007 and, immediately, new employees were told about the ghosts. I've worked in a bunch of places and most have some legend of a haunting, but every single employee affirmed that A, the theater was haunted, B, there were multiple ghosts, and C, they were so prevalent that you would get used to it very quickly. And they were not wrong. Theater 12 was the most haunted place in the theater. It was a benevolent haunting. It never seemed malicious, but it was certainly there. A girl died in there in the 2nd year of the theater being open. She fell from the row of seats above the rampway into the theater and landed on her head. She was playful, and, once you accepted that there was a ghost, it didn't really bother you. She would knock armchairs down, ushers had to walk through and put them all up, and open and closed doors. The first time I really accepted she was there involved those damn armchairs. I had just gone and put them all up when one fell. I put it back up and the armchair next to it fell. And then the whole row fell. Scary, but, once you figured it was a kid playing, it was somehow less scary. She'd also listen. If you told her you were scared, she would stop. The upstairs was haunted by a man. Nobody knew who that was, but everyone thought it was the dad that killed the family. All I know is that one was angry, the girl was playful, and you never felt scared when her things were happening. She wasn't stuck in Theater 12, but that was where she was most prevalent. The one upstairs slammed doors, held doors closed when you were trying to leave, and constantly turned lights on and off. The lights were the worst part. The upstairs booth was one long room with all of the projectors, and the lights were on each side of the room, so, when they went out, you had a 30-ish second walk to turn them back on. You could just feel someone there with you, and it was the feeling of being in a room with someone that is very angry with you but not saying anything. People said they saw things fly across the room or off desks, and I never saw that, but the lights and the doors were enough. There were various other things, and, if anyone's interested, I can post more. Was visiting a supposed murder site in some woods in Colorado with a friend of mine. We were there for all of 5 minutes before my friend stopped me short, and said aloud, "There are 4 shadow people moving towards us," and points in 4 different directions. I looked to the right of us, the only side that had any sort of light, and I watched a shadow jump across the light into a bush. It then pulled itself out of the bush and began to jerkily stagger towards us. Straight up looked like something from a Tool music video, stooped, jerking erratically, solid black with zero discernible features aside from a kind of lumpy human-esque shape. Edit, I totally missed the night shift part XD. I think so. There might be a logical explanation for this, but I can't think of one. Also, it's weirdly mundane, so if this is my brush with supernatural forces, I don't really know how to feel about it. So I used to work in an old folks' home doing night shifts. One of the small miscellaneous jobs the night shift staff had to do was unload the dishwasher in the little kitchen area for the residents and make sure all the dishes were neatly put away in the correct cupboards. So one night I get to unloading the dishwasher and realize someone's put a bowl in there, facing upwards. I'm mildly annoyed at whoever did this, but get to packing the mugs into their cupboard above the dishwasher. As a short woman, I'm having to get onto my tiptoes and stretch to put the last few mugs in this cupboard, but then, one of the mugs falls. I'm focusing in making sure the other mugs in the cupboard are stable, so I don't see where the mug lands, but I hear smashing ceramic, so I know it's smashed. I secure the mugs and go to assess the damage. To my surprise, the smashing sound I heard wasn't the mug, it was the bowl. It's split neatly into 3 pieces. I get to cleaning it up and realize there are no pieces of this mug anywhere. Apparently it's disappeared somehow. I look around for a bit, trying to work out where this mug landed, but I can't find them anywhere. I know they're not mixed up with the pieces of the bowl, because the split in the bowl is so neat, I could piece it back together and there are no pieces with a handle. I looked around for some time and I couldn't find any pieces of that mug. Eventually I just had to give up on it. I haven't worked there for a few years, but I've occasionally wondered if one of my old co-workers ever opened up the dishwasher and found a smashed mug at the bottom, like it traveled forwards in time somehow. I don't know why I immediately jumped to time jumping mug, but I'm going with it. I used to work as a security guard at a hospital in Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada. This particular hospital was split in half by the old hospital, built in the late 1800s, and the new part of the hospital. One night I was doing my rounds when I decided to walk down this long corridor next to the main entrance of the old hospital. They store all of the wheelchairs down this long hallway. As I round the corner to walk down the corridor, I see a woman standing at the end of the hallway. She was wearing a long blue button-up coat, black shoes and some kind of winged bowler hat. She honestly scared the crap out of me, so I closed my eyes and looked away for a moment. When I turned back, she was gone. A few days later I was walking down the entrance hallway of the new hospital and stopped to look at some old hospital photos hanging on the wall. I see a picture from the opening of the original wing and notice the same woman from the night before standing in the middle of all these nurses dressed in white. She was a head nurse or something like that. Sent a big shiver down my spine.